No one will love you until you understand this. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? Almost cruel. But if you're over 60, you've likely lived long enough to know that life rarely sugarcoats its truths. And sometimes, it's those very truths, the ones we ignore, the ones we push aside because they're uncomfortable, that hold the key to the peace, respect, and genuine love we've been yearning for. Now, I'm not just talking about romantic love, or family affection, or friendships. I'm talking about something deeper, the kind of love that makes you feel seen, valued, and safe. The kind that makes growing older not just bearable, but beautiful. Marcus Tullius Cicero, one of the greatest Roman philosophers, once said in his timeless essay De Senectute that aging, far from being a burden, is a natural gift, rich with opportunity. Yet so many of us resist it. We look in the mirror and mourn who we once were. We hide our wisdom behind modesty. We assume the world has forgotten us. And that assumption, my friend, is where everything starts to unravel. Here's the truth most people don't want to tell you. No one will love you, truly love you, until you love the part of yourself that you've been taught to resent. Your age, your past, your wrinkles, your scars, your stories. And if you're still with me, if that truth hasn't made you click away, then let's dig in together. Because once you understand this, not just in your head, but in your bones, everything changes. You see, Cicero believed that aging brought 4 primary benefits: detachment from temptation, a sharper mind, a wealth of experience, and freedom from the physical urgencies of youth. But in today's world, especially online, it's easy to feel like aging means becoming invisible. That if you're not chasing the trends, showing off your body, or speaking in 15-second clips, your voice doesn't matter. But that is a lie. And worse, it's a lie that many of us have internalized so deeply that we start acting like we don't matter. We stop speaking up. We apologize for existing. We believe the room is better without us in it. And here's where the irony hits hardest. When you start shrinking yourself, you give others permission to overlook you. You become invisible not because you're old, but because you've stopped shining. And what does that do to love? It makes it impossible. Because love, real love, doesn't come from people noticing your silence. It comes from people being drawn to your presence, your fire, your wisdom, your story. Now, think about the people you admire most, the ones whose words you remember, the ones who walked into a room and changed its energy. Were they young? Maybe, but I'll bet it wasn't their age that made them magnetic. It was their confidence, their clarity, their refusal to hide. Cicero was in his 60s when he wrote his most powerful philosophical works. He argued, not with bitterness, but with calm pride, that aging, far from stealing life, refines it. It gives you the time to reflect, the detachment to see things clearly, and the grace to choose your words wisely. What if you embraced that truth instead of resisting it? What if you stopped chasing relevance through the eyes of the young, and instead built a life that made the young chase you for your wisdom? This isn't about vanity. It's about power. The quiet kind. The kind that grows in gardens and libraries, in slow conversations and remembered names. The kind that listens more than it speaks. But when it speaks, it speaks with the force of 1,000 books. But to access that power, you have to do one thing first. You have to stop rejecting yourself. I don't mean in the obvious ways. I mean in the small ones. Every time you apologize for your memory, every time you say, "I'm too old for this," every time you shrink in a group and let someone younger interrupt you, every time you laugh at a joke about boomers because you're afraid of looking too serious. These small acts of rejection, repeated over years, teach others how to treat you. And soon, they don't hear your voice. They hear your silence. And silence, my friend, cannot be loved. Not deeply, not fully. So here's the beginning of a new chapter. A different kind of advice show. One not built on cliches, but on truths old as time. You want to be loved? Then start with the person in the mirror. Not in a self-help, chant your mantra kind of way, but in a sit with your pain, sit with your story, sit with your past kind of way. Own it. All of it. Because the moment you stop hiding your years is the moment you become unforgettable. And I promise you this. Once you stop hiding, the world will stop ignoring, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more wisdom. It needs more Ciceros. It needs you. There's a dangerous myth floating around, one that's easy to believe when you're over 60. It says that your best years are behind you, that who you were in your 30s or 40s was your real self, and that now you're just a quieter, slower version of that person, less sharp, less needed, less loved. But Cicero would have laughed at that. He didn't just tolerate aging, he celebrated it. In his words, the later years of life were not a slow decline, but a time of harvest, of reaping the wisdom earned from decades of mistakes, victories, heartbreaks, and healing. And that wisdom, it's not just valuable, it's irreplaceable. So let me ask you something. When did you last treat your story like it mattered? Not in passing, not as an anecdote to entertain younger friends, but as a source of power, a legacy? You see, the problem isn't that others don't love you. The problem is that many of us stop presenting ourselves as people worth loving. We silence our voices, we filter our pain, we shrink in our own skin. And then we wonder why no one leans in to hear what we have to say. Let me give you a real example. I met a man, 74 years old, former engineer, brilliant mind. He once designed emergency bridge systems, saved lives, literally. But he spent his retirement in silence, barely talking in group settings. Why? Because he felt outdated. He said, "No one cares about what I did. That was a different world." But here's the thing. Every time he did open up, the room changed. Eyes widened. People leaned forward. His story didn't just matter. It commanded the space. And I told him what I'll now tell you. The only thing outdated is the belief that your relevance expired. Cicero called this the gift of detachment. With age, you are no longer ruled by the same ambitions, the same anxieties. You've seen enough to know what matters. But what he didn't say, and what we must add today, is that you must not let that detachment become distance. Don't pull away from the world. Pull deeper into it, with clarity. Because here's a truth most won't admit. Younger generations are starving for guidance. They scroll through endless content, jump from video to video, all looking for something real. Not flashy, not fast, real. And you, yes, you, are sitting on decades of real. The kind of stories that don't just entertain, but anchor people. But those stories won't matter if you don't believe they do. So how do we reclaim that belief? Start with presence. When Cicero wrote about aging, he didn't speak of decline. He spoke of liberation, the freedom from what no longer serves, the ability to slow down, not because you're weak, but because you've earned the right to choose what matters. And in that slowness, there's power. Let others run. You walk with intention. Presence is not about being loud. It's about being undeniable, and it starts with how you carry yourself. Do you meet people's eyes when you speak? Do you share your stories without apologizing for rambling? Do you dress in a way that says, "I'm still here," not "don't look at me"? Because everything about your presence either invites love or deflects it. Now let's talk about something a little more personal. Forgiveness, not of others, of yourself. Many people over 60 carry a quiet weight, a lifetime of regrets, choices unmade, words unsaid. And that weight, even if unspoken, seeps into everything. It shapes your posture, your tone, your relationships. It whispers, "You don't deserve more. You've had your chance." That voice is lying. Cicero wrote that the soul of an elder should be light, like a traveler returning home after a long journey. But how can you return home if you're still punishing yourself for the road you took? Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself. And when you forgive yourself, really forgive, you stop seeking love as a form of redemption. You start accepting it as a natural response to who you are now, not who you were then. And that shift? That's when love finds you, not just from others, from life itself. So if you're still waiting to be chosen, by a partner, by a community, by a purpose, here's the hard truth. They're already waiting for you, but they can't see you through the mask of shame you're still wearing. Take it off. Show the lines on your face. They're not signs of aging, they're signs of surviving. Speak your truth, not as a plea, but as a gift. Stand up straighter, not because someone told you to, but because your story deserves space. Because no one will love you until you understand this. You are not a relic. You are a revelation. Let's pause for a moment. If you've been following along, maybe you've already started to feel a quiet stirring inside you. Maybe it's the realization that you've been carrying someone else's version of aging, not your own. Maybe it's the first time in years that you've felt something shift, not physically but emotionally. That's not an accident. That's what happens when you begin to reclaim your narrative. And this next part, it's the hardest part, because it's about loneliness. Not the kind you can solve with a phone call, not the kind you chase away with background noise or busyness. I'm talking about the deeper kind, the loneliness of being unseen, of being in a room full of people and still feeling invisible. It's the kind that many people your age carry like a second skin, even if no one notices, especially if no one notices. Cicero understood this. He warned not of loneliness in old age, but of idleness, of the soul's withdrawal from society, from purpose. He believed that a meaningful old age required effort, not physical exertion, but emotional contribution, engagement, legacy. But here's what he didn't face: a world like ours, a world where speed is worshipped, where youth is marketed like a product, and where the wisdom of elders is often treated like background noise. So yes, loneliness today looks different, but the cure hasn't changed. It starts with being needed, not in a desperate, clinging way, but in a purposeful, rooted way. So let me ask you, who needs you right now? I'm not asking who visits you or who calls you out of obligation. I'm asking whose life could be changed, even slightly, by your words, your presence, your memory. Because here's something I promise you is true. Someone out there is waiting for a story you've lived. Someone younger, someone lost, someone walking a path you've already walked. And they don't need perfection. They need presence, but they'll never find you if you stay silent. Let me tell you about Clara. She's 68, lives alone. Used to be a teacher. She thought she had nothing left to give. But then she started a blog. Nothing fancy, just a space where she shared weekly reflections about life, loss, aging, and what it means to wake up in a body that feels older than your spirit. At first, no one read it. Then, slowly, comments came in. Young mothers, retired men, people from halfway across the world. They didn't just read, they connected. Clara hadn't just found a hobby, she had reignited her purpose. You see, purpose doesn't have an expiration date, but it does have an ignition point. And for many, that point comes only when they stop waiting to be invited and start showing up unannounced, with wisdom in hand. That's what Cicero meant when he wrote, "For old age, if it lacks self-expression, becomes burdensome. Self-expression, not self-pity. Not silence, expression. So express. Speak. Write. Teach. Mentor. Volunteer. Or simply share a story over coffee that you've been too afraid to tell. Because your wisdom is not yours to hoard. It's a bridge for someone else's journey. A lighthouse in their storm. And when you begin to express, something beautiful happens. The loneliness begins to dissolve. Slowly, gently. Because you're no longer waiting for connection. You're creating it. Now this part's important. Creating connection in older age doesn't always look like it did when you were younger. It's not about popularity or crowded parties or family reunions that feel like obligation. It's about depth. 2 honest conversations can be more healing than 200 acquaintances. One shared story can bind two strangers across decades. So don't measure your social life by numbers. Measure it by meaning. And don't underestimate how magnetic your truth can be. You don't need to be a public speaker. You don't need to go viral. You just need to show up, fully, bravely, honestly. And in doing so, you teach others, especially the younger ones, what aging with dignity really looks like. That's the kind of example the world is starving for. Not anti-aging creams, not youth filters, but a living, breathing example of what it means to age with courage, with presence, and with purpose. So if you've been lonely, I see you, but I also challenge you. Don't wait to be found. Go find someone who needs your story more than you need their praise. Because love, real love, flows to the ones who offer themselves, and no one will love you, truly love you, until you understand this. You are not finished. You are just getting started. You are not a burden. Let's start there, because it might be the most dangerous lie you've ever believed. The idea that with each passing year, you take up more space than you give, that your presence is a weight, that your worth declines like an old battery, fading, dimming, disposable. But here's the truth that no one tells you loud enough. You are a library, and every wrinkle, every scar, every ache is a page in a story the world needs to hear. Cicero didn't fear old age. He feared irrelevance, but not because age made someone irrelevant. No, he feared what happened when people stopped living with intention, when they believed the lie that they had nothing left to offer, when they silenced their wisdom and left the next generation to learn from screens. Instead of sages, you are not here to vanish. You are here to illuminate. So let's dismantle this lie of being a burden once and for all. It starts with redefining what value looks like. In youth, value is often measured by productivity, what you do, how fast, how much. But in later years, your value isn't in what you do. It's in what you understand, what you've endured, what you've seen, what you've healed, what you can teach, if only someone asks. Or better yet, if you offer it anyway. We live in a culture that glorifies speed, but wisdom moves slow. And wisdom, your wisdom, is a currency more valuable than ever. But to share it, you must stop apologizing for existing. Yes, your joints hurt. Yes, your memory skips. Yes, the world feels faster, louder, sometimes crueler. But that doesn't mean you are obsolete. It means you are seasoned. And season, my friend, is flavor, the spice of life. Now let's address something else we often avoid: regret. It's the quiet weight we carry, especially later in life. The people we didn't forgive, the chances we didn't take, the dreams we shelved in the name of duty. And if we're not careful, regret begins to rot our joy. It whispers that it's too late, that we missed our moment, that love, meaning, purpose, those belong to the young now. But here's what Cicero would say: the only real mistake is letting regret silence you. Regret should not be a closing door. It should be a compass. What you regret shows you what you still value. So let it teach you. Let it point you toward the thing you still have time to change, to heal, to offer. Because it is not too late, not to start something, not to say something, not to love someone. In fact, some of the most beautiful acts of love happen in older age because they come with clarity. You no longer love to impress. You love to connect. You no longer seek validation. You seek truth. You no longer chase attention. You offer presence. And that is sacred. But you can't live that kind of love if you're still hiding behind the mask of "I'm fine." If you're still pretending your heart doesn't long for connection. If you're still telling yourself that your needs are inconvenient. Your needs are human. Your longings are holy. So be bold enough to admit them. Say it out loud. I want to be loved. I want to be seen. I want to be useful. I want to be remembered. There's no shame in that, only strength. Because when you speak your truth, you give others permission to do the same. And in that shared truth, love is born. The kind of love that lasts. The kind that doesn't care how fast you walk or how sharp your memory is, the kind that listens to your stories, that holds your hand without needing a reason, that remembers your name not because it's on a calendar, but because it's carved in their heart. But again, none of that comes until you understand this. You are not a burden. You are a blessing still unfolding. And when you carry yourself that way, with quiet dignity, with soft confidence, people notice, they lean in, they draw closer, because we are all craving depth. And depth is what you bring, so don't shrink. Stand in your story and watch the world make room for your presence. Because no one will love you, truly love you, until you understand this. You are not in the way. You are the way. You are not broken. Let those words sink in. Because if you're over 60, the world has probably tried to convince you otherwise. That you're fragile, that you've slowed down, that something is missing or malfunctioning inside of you. But what if I told you that the cracks people see in you aren't signs of damage, they're signs of depth? You've lived. That's not something to apologize for, it's something to honor. Cicero once wrote that aging was like the ripening of a fruit, not the decay, but the culmination. The fullness of life coming to maturity. And yet somehow we've confused maturity with malfunction. We've let our culture redefine old to mean irrelevant, replaceable, pitiful. Let me tell you something radical. Aging is a superpower if you let it be. But like any power, it must be claimed. And too many people let it sit dormant. Why? Because they've accepted the language of loss, the narrative of decline, the myth that says your body's slower, so your worth is smaller. But you are not your knees. You are not your blood pressure. You are not your pill organizer. You are your soul. And that soul has been forged in decades of storms, sunlight, birth, death, love, and loss. That soul has earned the right to lead. So why are you still asking permission? Why are you still waiting for someone younger to validate your story? Why? Are you still whispering your needs like they're inconveniences instead of instructions for how to love you better? If no one's told you today, it's okay to need. It's okay to ask. It's okay to expect more than surface-level kindness. Because here's what people won't admit. Many of us, young and old, are starving for real. And you, my friend, are real. But you must stop hiding behind politeness. Stop pretending that it's okay when it's not. Stop nodding in agreement when your heart is screaming to be heard. And when you do that, when you stand in your full truth, something remarkable happens. People start to orbit around you. Not because you demand attention, but because you exude peace. Because your presence offers something no app, no trend, no filter can provide: rootedness. That's what Cicero admired most in older souls, their stability. In a chaotic world, the elder becomes the anchor, not because they move the fastest, but because they move the wisest. But anchors don't work if they're not dropped, so let your wisdom land. Share it, in conversation, in letters, in journals, in family dinners, in YouTube comments. Wherever you are, let your life speak. Because silence will never reveal your worth. Only expression will. And let's be honest, the world could use a little less noise and a lot more depth, a little less urgency and a lot more perspective, a little less trending and a lot more timeless. That's where you come in, not to compete with youth, but to complete the picture. Because without you, your stories, your steadiness, your honesty, we're just guessing. We're walking trails that you've already mapped, and you may not know it yet, but there is someone younger watching you. Maybe it's your grandchild. Maybe it's a stranger in the supermarket. Maybe it's someone online who read a single sentence you once wrote, and they're watching. Not just what you say, but how you carry yourself, how you age, how you love, how you grieve, how you start again. They're learning from you. So what will you teach them? Will you show them that getting older is something to fear? Or will you show them that it's something sacred? Because the truth is, and this is the heartbeat of it all, no one will love you until you understand this. You were never broken. You were becoming. So here we are. If you've come this far, it means something inside you refused to look away. Something deeper than curiosity. Something closer to recognition. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a video. Maybe it was a mirror. A mirror held up to your past, your hopes, your quiet griefs. A mirror that didn't lie, but also didn't condemn. One that said, "You are still here, and that still means something." But now comes the real question. What will you do with that reflection? You see, Cicero believed the final chapters of life weren't just about rest. They were about contribution. And not the noisy kind, not the kind you shout from stages, but the quiet kind. The kind that plants seeds in others. The kind that whispers truths that echo long after you're gone. And the greatest truth of all? You don't need to be younger to be worthy. You don't need to be busy to be important. You don't need to be needed to be lovable. You just need to be honest with yourself, about what you want, about what you've endured, about what you're still capable of giving and receiving. Because here's what no one tells you until it's too late. Love doesn't chase those who hide. It finds those who show up, who risk being seen, who refuse to apologize for still needing connection, still wanting tenderness, still hoping for meaning. And this is where many people get stuck. They think strength means self-sufficiency, that to be admired, they must be invincible. But Cicero knew better. He argued that true wisdom comes with accepting limitations and embracing them not as flaws, but as part of your full humanity. You don't have to do everything. You just have to be real. And real people, with their contradictions, their bruises, their earned joy, are magnetic. That's the paradox. The more vulnerable you are, the more love can actually reach you. Not pity, not obligation, but true, chosen. Love are the kind that sees you, all of you, and stays. So if no one has said this to you in a while, let me say it now. You are not invisible. You are not too late. You are not done. You are not too much or not enough. You are not a problem to solve. You are a presence to cherish, and the more you believe that, truly, deeply, the more others will start to reflect it back to you. That's how love works. It responds to honesty. It's drawn to integrity, and it flows toward those who stop pretending and start living. So maybe today is not the end. Maybe it's the reintroduction. Maybe today is the day you stop shrinking and start shining again, quietly, boldly, on your terms. Maybe today you forgive yourself. Maybe today you call someone just to say you miss them, not because you're lonely, but because you're alive. Maybe today you write a story from your childhood that no one ever asked about, and maybe you don't post it. Maybe you just write it to remind yourself that you lived a life worth documenting. Maybe today you don't wait for permission. You take up space. Because no one will love you, not fully, not honestly, not deeply, until you understand this. Your presence is not conditional. It is a gift, and like all great gifts, it's not meant to be locked away. It's meant to be shared. So please, share yourself with your friends, with your family, with your community, with the world, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you finally know the truth. You were never unloved, only unseen. And now, with eyes wide open, heart unguarded, and soul unburdened, you see yourself. That's the first love, and it might just be the one that changes everything.